Hello, everyone.
Welcome.
Good to see you. Great to see you back again and some new faces. It's terrific to be together. And before we get underway, just to give you the shape of our engagement today and for the next few days, we'll meet for about an hour and a half. Then we'll take a half an hour break, and then we'll have our final hour in the session. And we plan to do a couple of small breakout groups and hear a lot from you in terms of your response and engagement.
And this course is the course Online Aliveness. What we want to share in these 4 days with you is our experience how online meetings can be very human and very alive meetings. And as we pointed out yesterday, they are real meetings. They are not virtual meetings. I'm real, you're real, everyone here is real, and we are really meeting. And this is the starting point to create live online meetings. We understand that many of you are counselors, coaches, people who work as psychotherapists with other people. The reason why we want to give this course is because we have a long-standing experience how to create live online meetings on Zoom. And with the COVID crisis, many people are coming online now. And because of the social distancing, people are also forced to move their work, their business online. And we understand that you have a lot of experience how to create these spaces. And we want to help you how to transfer your knowledge, your experience to this online forum.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and in many ways, we want to open up the possibility that you can do the deep work that you do online. What we mean by online aliveness is a shared field of interconnection, a shared recognition that we are not separate. And it's in that connectivity that something comes alive, and it's that deep connectivity that allows you to do counseling, coaching, lead workshops, do transformation with other human beings, which is what you do in your work, and do that online.
And of course, the way we do this, we have our own style. It is also developed from our own work that we call emergent we-space dialogue work. But we understand that you have your own expertise, and we want to encourage to really translate your own expertise on how to do this and find your own style with your own strengths and your own capacities. The reason why we use our style is also one reason, at least, because we understand, and we tried to talk about this yesterday, that one of the big differences between on-site meetings and online meetings is that we have no physical space to support this meeting. We don't bring our bodies to a house, to a room, to a circle at a table. We have to work with inner movements. We have to bring our inward attention to this shared space. So this is the reason, or one of the reasons, why we really emphasize how to create coherence in this we-space, because it's this co-created coherence that allows us to make this meetings, any kind of meetings, a space where we don't fragment, where we hold the whole, where we stay in the whole, where synergetic capacity can be developed. This is part of the reason why we emphasize this focus on holding the we-space together.
And so yesterday what we did was we wanted to give you an experience of this we, or of the openness and the connectivity that is possible in an online space. And if you feel like I didn't really get it, I'm not sure if I felt it, don't worry. Just relax. It's okay. Just be here and be present, be curious, and things will unfold. But we wanted to focus on sort of the individual experience for you as a facilitator, so that you have a touchstone, a place where you go, okay, I'm now, I sense that there's something going on. And also to realize that this capacity to sense in this environment, in this context, is a new capacity that we're developing as human beings and bringing to this new technology, so that it can enhance our being human and our being connected to each other. But so we started there with this is, let's come together and be present, which I invite you to be right now, to be present together, to see each other, to meet each other in this space, presence to presence, because we're not physically together, so we're meeting in presence. And in that, now today we're going to focus more on how do we engage with the space between us in order to allow ourselves and our clients and our workplaces to work from this meeting in consciousness space.
And again, the reason why we do this is because we want to establish an anchor, an experiential anchor that can be a reference point, first for the facilitator, but then for all participants, that there is more than just my me space going on. There is a wholeness that we are together in, and this is not just an idea of something, this can be experienced. And you remember the exercise we did yesterday, where we went back and forth between the me space and the we space. The reason why we do this, because we want to really highlight and point out the experience of a shared space that we together experience. And we also would like to talk a little more about what this we space is, or the different levels of this we space as we see it, because any kind of human interaction, of course, and not only human interaction, also beyond human interaction, is in a we space. Mm-hmm. If we are aware of it, or if we are not aware of it, we can be completely ignorant of it. We still are in a we space.
And that anywhere, to follow what Thomas was just saying, anywhere there is relationship or relatedness, there is a we. The thing is, we're pointing to a particular kind of we that becomes visible, almost visible. It's not visible with the eye, but with the inner eye, that becomes apparent in this setting. But there is always a we, whether or not we are aware of it. There's a we here before we become conscious of it, and the we that we're accustomed to, and this may sound a little paradoxical, we're accustomed to living in a we that identifies each of us as an autonomous individual and as a separate individual. That's a collective way of, that's a collective in which the individual is highlighted. And, you know, all of the things that the ways that society rewards people is through the individual. The way we recognize who each other is through what individuals do. So that individuated space is also a we space. But at this point, we're coming to a point where we need to move beyond the sheer individuated human being, and to be able to, from that individuation, be able to meet in a wholeness, in a connectivity.
I mean, the insight that we are working here with is a very simple insight from Gestalt psychology, which is that the whole is more than the sum of the parts. So when we meet in this constellation, of course, we are a sum of people. We are more than 130 people right now. So it's a sum of 130 people. And it is important to appreciate each and every one of us in this space. At the same time, we have to appreciate that the gestalt of the whole space has its ownness. And when we want to create synergy and coherence in this wholeness, we have to be aware of both. We have to be aware of each other in a personal way, and we have to be aware of the space as a whole, so that the different parts that we are can come together in a synergetic way.
And just to say it again, to emphasize it, we do that because there is no room that holds us right now. The space that holds us is our consciousness, our intention, our awareness. So that is so in working with that, we are working with something that is larger than you and me and us in a room. We're working with something that actually doesn't really have boundaries.
So if you ask us, is there one simple trick that we will work with? Yes, there is one simple trick, that is creating awareness for wholeness.
Mm.
Creating awareness for wholeness, first for us as facilitators, so that we can be aware of it, can also manifest it, and also can invite others people to it, so that this space can be held in the integrity of its wholeness. And as I said before, any kind of relationship is already a V-space. But, and this is the very point, the V-space changes its own quality dramatically when it's not just the case, but we are aware that it is the case. There's a whole qualitative difference when something is not just the case, but we are aware that it's the case. I want to compare it with our own individuality, being a person. We as a species, as humanity, it took us thousands and thousands of years to become an individual, to individuate. And what this individuation process was about is that we were not only individuals, because to some degree we were already individuals all along, but we became aware that we are. That's our I sense, where we as a species not only were individuals, but we were able to realize and awake to the fact I am. And that changed our nature as humans. The factor that became, wow, wait a moment, I am. That means our responsibility, our capacity to show up depends on this capacity to be aware that we are. And in the same way, like the I sense or the individuality changes dramatically when we become aware of itself, any kind of V-space changes dramatically when the V-space becomes aware of itself through the participants, particularly to the people who are inviting to this space. This is why we again and again emphasize this consciousnness of this wholeness, of this V-space.
Actually, I love that you said that if there's one thing that is the secret, it's, which he's never said before, that the one thing that's a secret is about being aware of wholeness. And that's, I want to go into that a little bit more, that wholeness is not something that is like, okay, there are 131 of us here, or a little more, because some of us are in double windows like Thomas and myself. But that it's not just us, it's actually an intuition of something much larger, something that is actually quite ungraspable. So the awareness of wholeness is something that is quite deep in ourselves, and it is an intuition of limitlessness that is grounded by the human beings who are present and awake to it and aware of it. And it is part of the reason why this experience of coming together in this consciousness, presence to presence, in a collective field of shared presence, feels so expansive and allows us to create so much from it.
Yeah, and again, we think, and that's what our work is based on, that everything depends on this. And that even more so on online meetings where we have nothing but our consciousness to come together, everything depends on this. And the fact that we are together, that we are in these spaces anyway, the fact that the V space changes when we become aware of it, has even a third level. And this is what we're pointing to. When we become aware of it, there's the chance to care for it. There is a co-creative quality in any kind of gathering, online and on-site, when all the participants, or at least a critical part of the participants, care for the dynamics, the gestalts, the blooming, developing of the space, that they are not only aware, yes, we are together in something here, but they care, that they put their heart into coming together in this and allowing this, that it can hold also the different perspectives and the multiplicity that we are in a living, developing wholeness.
And actually, I hope that yesterday you had some taste of this, some touch of this, that when we meet presence to presence and recognize that that presence is not, my presence actually isn't just simply mine, that it's not separate from your presence, that we're in a collective field of presence together, there is something in us that is touched. There is almost an automatic care, but to become aware of and actually to take care of the care that one feels, to take care of the space between us, be interested in it, curious about it, not want it to thrive and be strong, because it's the point at which we are not separate from each other, where we are connected most deeply. That is how we keep this space coming alive and developing. But it's a natural response to the recognition that we are in presence together. And right now we would like to move into groups rather quickly here. And
what we would like you to do in these groups is to talk about how to create coherence, how to come together aware and allow a collective awareness of this wholeness that we are together in. And the way we would like to talk about this is to make yourself aware that we have a relationship with each other that is a personal relationship, that is the foundation of any kind of a relational field. And we can expand this awareness from a one-to-one awareness to awareness that we are all together in a sphere that holds this group.
Yeah, so what is it what is it for you that allows you to begin to appreciate the coherence and the existence of this wholeness? Share that and be that as you're doing it.
Yeah. In fact, that share that and be that is the thing we want to invite you mostly to. So we not only want you to talk about it and investigate it, but to act on it and to care for the space that is opening up between. It will be a group of 5. So that in the way how you kind of investigate, what does it mean to collectively become aware and facilitate the awareness of this wholeness, that you also act on this becoming aware together, and just be very careful, respectful for each other, for each other's time, and also be respectful for the space as a whole.
Okay.
How much time will we have?
You'll have 15 minutes.
Okay.
And there will be 5 of you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
It takes a couple of minutes for us to prepare this.
And actually, yeah, great.
And are we to go around in a structured way or just popcorn style with what we're feeling inside?
You just do it. We tend not to impose an order on it. And particularly being as small a group that you're as you are. So just be caring of each other as part of the space. So that means not, being aware how much time people are you're taking and others are taking.
And just the language that we use is also not to use it as a popcorn style, because it indicates the individual coming in. What the language we use for a reason is to weave it together. And we would encourage you for a free stream of weaving of this conversation and weaving of this we space.
This must be the 5 of us, yes?
No, we haven't.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Here we go.
All right. I can also do that. Okay. Everyone back? Yeah, it looks like it. Great. Hope it was a good experience. We want to hear from you. And just someone suggested that we put the places where we're from behind our names. To do that, you click in the upper right corner of your screen and you'll be given the option to rename.
And then you just can put behind your name the place, maybe also the country where you're from, or the state in the US.
And a reminder again on how to raise your hand, because so that we can engage is you click on the participants icon at the bottom of your screen, and then the list of names of all the participants will appear on the right side, and then click hand raise. It's at the bottom of the list.
There are several icons. One is called yes, no, go slower, go faster, and one is hand.
Raise hand.
Raise hand. This one, you can raise the hand and we can see that you want to speak.
Okay.
Okay, and there are also the first people who did raise their hand, and I would invite Mary Latham, if you want to unmute your microphone. Yes.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I had so much fun. That was so much fun. And we were blessed to have one woman in the group who articulated so well. She talked about this field of energy.
Mm-hmm.
And I had, and what you two were saying, that something new is created when we are all connected. Something new can be created.
Exactly.
And my two thoughts, one was, I need you.
Mm.
I need everybody here.
Mm-hmm.
because without your presence, that being can't be complete. This isn't just me. So that was very powerful and beautiful. The other image I got are all waves of energy. And, you know, there were 5 of us in our group, and I said, you know, if 5 waves swell up and crash, then you get a huge big wave. And also the amplitude, that's the word. If you graph it on a graph, when the waves are waving at the same energy, then the amplitude grows really big. But if the waves are at different energies, they cancel each other out. And so plus I'm just so glad to be with people that like to talk about this. So thank you.
Thanks, Mary.
To be very honest, I have nothing to add.
I think people are going to be surprised at that. But that's great.
It's great.
Good.
Thank you for that.
Jackie and Wayne.
Thank you. It's just Jackie. I just wanted to share that first of all, I didn't know how to answer the question. And then as we proceeded, I realized that for me, the energy of the we group was coming from the 5 of us working to answer, you know, talking about the same topic, working to come up with a solution. And I imagined it could be whatever the topic was, but in that mutual desire to find something, I could feel the energy of the group coming together. And I also had a very strong desire with one particular person in the group to really get to know them. I have no idea where that came from. It was just this wonderful resonance with this one person. And I tried then not to focus on that so much because I wanted to look at the whole, but I just wanted to mention that because it was a really special feeling. Thank you.
I think that one of the key words that you used was mutual, that you were mutually working on something. And it's that shared intention, which could be a project that you're working on together when you really share a desire for it to happen, or in this case, basically a shared desire to learn and understand this. It's because this ground of not being separate and is actually so real. It kicks in whenever we put our collective focus on it or something in the middle. And when our focus is on that rather than on each other as individuals in a certain sense. I mean, each of us is there as an individual with our own unique talents, gifts, experience, but we're doing something together, and the together part is highlighted. Then something can begin to really move, and that's very exciting.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. That helps me to understand that.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm Janet from Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I'm a professor at a local university. And so I will be teaching online with the virus. And one of the things that I'm also working with about this consciousness is how do I, as a white person, or white-skinned person, show up in spaces that are not my white culture or dominant culture spaces, out of respect, and then how to teach that, how to teach other white people how to show up in other kinds of spaces respectfully. And so I appreciate this whole conversations to deepening my skills and my inner awareness and my connectivity.
I think we have friends who are doing a series of calls right now on both people of color on what can white people do, and they're coming from a place though like this, where you begin with the recognition that we're not separate. And when we begin with the realization, not the idea that we're not separate, but the recognition that we're not separate, that in that there is a deep respect, because we are so interdependent, and we are so interdependent in this context on each other and on each other's presence. And the reality of that, rather than the idea of that, is a very powerful learning.
And also being aware that I have ingrained, I come into spaces as a white person, having learned power and dominance and privilege that many are not even aware of. So I can be interconnected and also be aware that I'm perceived, and I move in the world in that way with a certain kind of white skin privilege that impacts spaces. So thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you for bringing this in, because we are moving online. One of the power of this moving online is that the likelihood that we will meet with people of different perspectives becomes much higher. You just look around here, to meet from so many backgrounds, so many countries, and so many continents. That's a new feature of meeting, and that's on one hand exciting, and on the other hand, it's a big learning experience, because we have to learn how to do this with respect. And in fact, we have to hold a lot of context. As you were saying, white people have to also hold the context of the relationship between white people and people of color in this. So there's a lot asked for. Just a simple example from yesterday, the simple exercise that we started with the eye gazing, which is a very powerful exercise. But as we learned by doing this, in Asian culture, it's close to an insult to look directly in one's eyes. So one has to be aware that we have very different cultural backgrounds, and we have to move very carefully how to do this to create mutual respect. So there's just a big learning experience, and I'm sure there's a lot you could teach us how to do this with the background that you have. And so we have to learn from each other how to do this. And there's a second part to it, which you were also pointing out. There's something in experiencing and appreciating this V space, that this space has no gender, has no race, and has not even a cultural background. It's held by all of us. So there's something also which is a powerful thing to acknowledge, that we are together in something that is an open place, that allows us to also move to some degree beyond our identity. And let's see how this co-creative space wants to develop as it unfolds. So to do both, to really respect the difference and also the power structures that are behind that, and learn this. And this is a lot to ask. And we won't, it will take time and time to do this. And on the other side, to also see the potential of these meeting places where we can meet in something that is just a co-creative space.
And just our human presence, that, as you were saying, has no gender, has no race. It is human presence. And there's to look at our differences from that place is a very powerful thing.
So honestly, this is one thing that really inspires us for this work, because there's so much potential in this, out of this very reason. And also the challenges that you are pointing out, rightfully so, and thank you for doing that.
Okay, thank you. Glenna.
Well, I'm going to apologize right now because I'm sitting outside and they're mowing. So if it's too loud or annoying, just tell me and I'll stop talking. First of all, I just wanted to say that it was amazing in our small group how, just by simply sharing where we are from, and I recognized the last name of one of the participants and the place where she was from, we realized we're cousins that we've never met.
That's amazing.
Long distance, probably like third cousins or something, but I recognized her last name. So but I want to jump in on what we were just talking about, that Thomas was saying that this is an opportunity for conversations with people, with persons and places that we might not have ever had an experience of. For me, there's a courage aspect to it. I wouldn't feel maybe drawn to or having the courage to engage in conversation with people in a different country or about different topics if I had to go to a physical place. But the fact that I could do it this way, that I have this medium, that I'm in the comfort of my own yard, but that I have this ability to share my heart in this with this space, the we space, this way, kind of gives me courage, and that desire to create wholeness. You know, sometimes it's like an abstract, oh yeah, you know, we want peace in the world, but how do we really do that? And if we really do have that idea of creating wholeness and peace in the world, then this is giving me hope that it is actually possible. So thank you.
Thank you, Glenna. I think one of the things that this makes real is that it is actually an aspect of our ongoing reality, or that this is the fact that we are not separate, that there is a way in which we are all connected, is actually a reality. And that's a very, it takes something to really let that in. Okay. And Anne-Marie.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Elizabeth. Hi, Tom. We had a beautiful gathering, and as you know, have some familiarity with this work, but what I found amazing was the always newness of this, and this sense that this field, this we space, has its own kind of intelligence. And that really struck me as I was speaking, that I was saying things that I didn't know I was going to say. And I think my experiences, however many times one experiences that, it's still a miracle. It still blows you away. And you find yourself saying things that you almost didn't know you knew. And yet you did know. I don't know, it's a peculiar sense of not knowing and knowing at the same time, and everybody recognizing that. And it was, it did blow me away. Even though I don't know, it's difficult to explain. And then the other thing that was interesting in the group was there were 5 of us, and one lady didn't have her camera on, and I thought at the beginning, oh, that's going to interfere with us being able to come together in some way, and it didn't at all. And that was so interesting, that just the fact that we were all in that presence and dedicating ourselves to that presence, that the fact that we could see each other or not didn't matter at all. And that was amazing to see.
Well, thank you, Marie. It allows us also to talk to something that, again, we find very crucial and very helpful to facilitate these co-creative spaces. Because exactly as you were describing, when we allow to be present to each other into this space, there is a intelligence arising that is beyond and before us. But in order for this to happen, we have to be open for the presence. So part of how we can help participants to do that is just to make this conscious, that when we come into a space like this, we come into this space with our identities, with who we think we are, our expectations, what we think we know, what we think, what we want, where we want to go. And this is all good. There's nothing wrong about that. But encounter, relationship, lives from this space where we don't know and meet. Where seeing you and Marie right now opens up something, as you were describing before, that I would not have thought about or talked about. Just out of our encounter, something opens out of the present open space. So to really also point this out, that this is a co-creative potential that comes from silence, letting go, listening, and something emerging between us. Silence does not necessarily mean that we have to have long silence. It also can mean that. It can be very powerful. Mm-hmm. It can be also just a silence that's there anyway, and to listen to that and let this become part of the conversation. Mm-hmm. But there's something very fruitful in the moment of meeting, and in a small group like the group that you have been before, this is particularly powerful because you say, wow, all of a sudden you are in something together and you see the other faces. And when you allow yourself to be immersed in that, this co-creative space can open up.
I'm struck, Thomas, that you're speaking to Anne-Marie about and all of us about different dimensions of creating coherence. So one is that in silence there is a coherence because it's boundless. When I am silent, it is, or when we're silent together, we're in something together already. There's a coherence in that. You're also speaking about a coherence of presence, that when I am just fully present and not in some ways fixed in my identity or focused on myself and my agenda and who I think I am and who I want you to know me to be, that in that openness is also a coherence, creates a coherence. And in that coherence, there is out of the coherence is where emergence comes. But it's not a coherence that one can know and one can have a prefixed idea about or grab onto. The coherence comes from that letting go that you were speaking of, that letting go, putting one's agenda and ideas and so forth kind of to the background. They don't go away, but your interest, your intention are engaged in the middle, and that opens this space up to creativity, energy, and something new, as people have been saying.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. Linda. Oh, we have one last before our break, right? Yeah. So Linda, that will be you.
Okay. So, well, something you said kind of took care of what prompted me to talk. That is that I kept wanting something more. We were in silence, and it was very hard for me to be fully present. Somehow or other, I wanted, like somebody said, the purpose, or you wanted, like, sometimes I felt the we space and working together, or from hearing more from people. What I found interesting is I decided not to say anything. Mm-hmm. So that's my usual way of being, is to watch and see what happens. And then, so I didn't fully feel, I don't think I really fully felt the we space. And I'm fairly new to this. I'm not totally new, I just haven't practiced for a long time. Mm-hmm. And so I do remember when I can be away from a group and I can meditate and feel the whole group. Mm-hmm. But that was just challenging for me to somehow feel like, oh, and I think there was a bit of judgment on my part, like I'm supposed to be able to do this. What's going on here? You know, mm-hmm. I should feel more. Mm-hmm. So that was just any help with that, or maybe I should just hang in there.
No.
Oh, definitely hang in there.
Definitely hang in there. That's our first advice. The second is a question. As I hear you, you said it's not completely new to you, and it's not that you were not aware of anything, it was just not as easy. Did I hear you right there? That there was,
Or you wanted it to be more.
you wanted it to be more.
Yeah, there was something like I felt like I had no sense of what it was. And yet there were people in the group who felt like that.
Yeah.
And it felt like I was less in a subtle space, more in a concrete space.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that just may be where I am at the moment in my life, even though that's not.
Yeah. The reason why I'm asking this way, and again, because you said you are less in a subtle space, more in another space, it sounds like that there still was some connection to the subtle space, though, that you feel there could be more. Because the way usually we work with this, and if I may use your question as an example, because this question comes quite often with people, to listen if there's really no connection to this space at all. And if there's some space just to make conscious that maybe it's difficult, but there is some space. Because if there's some space and some connection, and one becomes aware that there's a resonance building up that makes it easier to connect to this co-creative we space. So the way we usually work with it is again a pointing out practice, to really listen carefully, and you don't want to put something in someone's mouth. You want to be honest and authentic, but you listen carefully. Is there something where there's already at least a hint of a recognition of what this space is about? And if there is, just to ask so, and see if there's something that can be made more conscious, because usually this is a way that opens something in this connection.
And often the way that one can do that is from this desire for more. This desire, like, oh, there should be something more. If we don't do the should part, but lean into the quality of longing in that, the quality of reaching and opening in that space, that can lead you into a different relationship with what is going on in a way that can be quite immediate, because this longing, the hope, the anticipation is all part of is often how we experience this as human beings.
Because there's an assumption behind it. The assumption behind is that in the longing, there is already a recognition of what the longing is for.
Mm.
What I wanted was, I wanted to feel more about each person.
Yeah.
Or to know more.
But the longing in this wants to have more from everyone.
From everyone, yes, for sure.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you don't personalize it as this is me and it's about this is just about me and my thing, but realize that this is part of the movement of this, you could say this intelligence that wants to hear more, wants to connect more with everyone. Then you start to realize that you're in a collective space. And you wanted to?
Yeah, because one very fundamental thing, I think, is to really understand that this space, this collective space, only works through invitation.
Mm.
It's based on our free choice to be interested in something as a potential. You cannot push anyone into any space, and that there's an invitation to this space, and usually the invitation can be done by pointing out, as you were talking about, the longing, that there is something one is interested in, and finding a resonance to this space. And quite often, not always, by looking for this resonance for this space is opening up. And it is part of the subtlety and the fragility of this space that by inviting in this way, we can, with our free will, just try out what this space creates between us and see the potential of this co-creative intelligence that is opening up.
And let's take a pause here. We will, so we'll take a half an hour break now, and we'll come back and take more questions and do another group. But right now, 30 minutes off screen if you can, and a little engagement with fresh air or nature, or just to allow all of this to settle and sift in, and to feel the vibration of aliveness in a different way.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay, we're back. I think probably most of us are back. And apologies, it was my misreading of the time. We went 20 minutes early on break, so I'm sorry about that. But the total time will be the same. We'll just, this half will be an hour and a half, and the earlier part was an hour. So thank you for dealing with my mistake. So, but let's continue with the questions, and keep in mind we are not simply answering someone's question. We are also working to bring in a deeper understanding of what it is here that we're doing, how it is that we can create deep and living connection using this technology, how we can pierce this screen and actually touch each other in a deep way in order for you to do your work. Let's see. Nicole, I see your hand up. You're first in line.
Thank you. What came to me was that so much, like one of the people in our group spoke to, so much of what even happens in person, let alone on a Zoom screen, how much of that is invisible. And when we tap in, like with our awareness, it seems to me like at least I get like possibilities of what might be going on, and maybe some of it is observation of subtle movements and facial expressions. And one of the people in our group works with children, and I was coming from this kind of experience of how within the I that I am, there is a we, and there are parts of me that are children still, and in the context of a group, sometimes those more fearful maybe parts of me, I think that's where my longing comes from, to have information to go on that it's audible and visible rather than silent and hard to interpret. And then it's been occurring to me that often, especially with children in Zoom scenarios, and with people who have like inner children that are maybe have some fear and are looking for information to go on, that there's almost like a filling in that needs to happen more on Zoom than in person. And like examples of that to me are what you did with the document that we got before the course, where, you know, it said, you know, position yourself in these ways, pay attention to this so that you can be present. And I think that when I've noticed that when I tend to the child in me and the child in others, whether they're actually human children still or not, that helps to kind of set the scene and set the context for much more enthusiastic presence and then co-creation of something.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. While you are talking with us, you see us, and you're aware of our facial expression. And there is an awareness of our shared humanness in this space, isn't there? Because everything that you're laying out, I think, is relevant and important. And there's something that is also important, which I would call intuitive intelligence, that is also true online. And what you were saying, and I very much agree with you, that we are not as skilled online as we usually are on site, because it is a very different setting. And similar, like you drive a car, you first have to learn it with your frontal lane. Only later on, basically, it becomes second nature, and you get an intuitive sense, oh, I have to go right here, and you don't think. So there's something where we have to slow down and learn a new skill, which is seeing each other online. And what I mean with this skill is not necessarily the Zoom skill. It's also, we have to master Zoom, and we have to, but to be aware that all the little hints that we are used, how we grew up, how we read each other, how we are aware of each other, how we feel empathy, how we are aware of the other's awareness is slightly different. And this is a challenge, but part of what we really try to work here with and experience together, it's here. It's here. And part of what we're doing is just expose each other to the here-ness of it, not necessarily so much to think about it and to contemplate on it, although this is also important, but first of all, to be aware of it and to again trust our intuition, that our intuition also works here, maybe in a slightly different way. And to the degree that we can do that, we also can relax in this Zoom space. And a lot of anxiety and tension that's part of the Zoom space right now, my guess is that over time, we will master this space in a way that we will feel much more comfortable. And there still will be limitations, but there will be also things that are only here possible. But the invitation that we want to invite everyone to is to experiment with the realness and the aliveness of this space and find new ways to develop our intuition, to play with it.
Mm. I think we have so many hands up. I would love to say something further, but let's keep moving. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you very much. Stuart. Stuart, are you here?
Stuart Garber.
Maybe he stepped away.
Yeah.
Okay, then Maureen.
Hello, Maureen.
Hi. I'm just going to hide myself. So I didn't work. Yeah, well, I just wanted to say thank you, Elizabeth and Thomas. I was introduced to you over the weekend from the Wilds Beyond Climate Justice. I was watching some of the recordings and I was really taken with you. And then came here. So it was really an honor. And you talk about wholeness, and it really struck me around creating wholeness, but be like the whole notion of just being wholeness and how we do that. And some of the work that I do is around compassionate, reflective, receptive listening and conflict transformation. And it just made me think about like that notion of really checking or noticing our triggers, our judgments, our biases, in order to keep bringing myself back to a more coherent self, so that I can be more whole in the spaces that I'm in or facilitating, and how hard that work is in terms of practicing, but also practicing, well, I guess mindfulness and just noticing when our triggers come up, and then noticing, let me say mine, noticing when my judgments come up and my biases come up, and then what do I do with that? And so that whole notion of being whole, I'm recognizing more and more how much work that is to bring it into our spaces.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched the two of you facilitating, and I'm inhaling you in terms of how you're navigating and maneuvering and how you bring your wholeness. And not once have I felt that you're the so-called experts, you know, that you've created this space so that we're all in it together learning. And I feel that's a big part of wholeness.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to bring it back to also, I do a lot of anti-racism work, and that whole notion of, being in a white body and bringing ourselves into spaces and recognizing our white-skinned bodies, and how just not even what comes out of our minds, but just the visual, you know, in spaces sometimes does harm. And so I guess when you have capacity to, am I freezing?
Yeah, you froze, but you came back.
Okay, yeah, sorry. That capacity, like I love what you said. It's true, when we come into these spaces, it's like our consciousnesses are coming in, and so really they're in an ultimate or universal sense, we're all one, and we're in this beautiful space together. And then, and I know so many of you know this already, and then we're also, it's a relative reality too, so we bring our identities. And so I'm always thinking about, okay, yeah, there's a consciousness and we're in it together and it's beautiful, and there's also, we bring our relative, you know, our relative realities to that space and our identities to that space. And so how do we create wholeness in those spaces, knowing who our own identities, you know, knowing that our white skin brings a certain amount of power and entitlement and privilege. And so how do we keep, you know, bringing that back to be aware and noticing ourselves, and just, I guess, just continue to work on our biases and our judgments, and trying to create more wholeness through making the unconscious, the implicit biases more explicit, so we can become more whole in the spaces that we're in. So I just wanted to offer that.
Just to say, I think part of what you're speaking to, Maureen, is also a kind of important warning, not to use unity as a means of spiritual bypassing.
Yeah.
Trying to jump past difference through some kind of belief or even experience of unity. That the ground that this gives of sharing presence and recognizing that we are each here present, that this is the essence of our existence, our being alive, and that we share that, is not to jump over things and say, now, isn't this great? But is a foundation, a different foundation from which to have difficult conversations.
Yeah.
And conversations in which we own the bodies, the legacy, where we come from.
Yeah, thanks for reflecting it back. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, Lynn.
Hi, and thank you so much. This course has just been a wonderful experience so far. the question I have, I've been thinking a lot about different meetings or gatherings that I facilitate, and sometimes we're in this mode. It's more of a concrete agenda. We are planning things, and but other times we really want to create that space and be in the we space where something new emerges. And my question is really how to conceive of these. They can seem like two different ways of being. Should I think of it all as emerging from a we space, or like somehow moving back and forth? And how to, if so, how to like facilitate that moving back and forth. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that.
I mean, what you're talking to is just the very fact that we have these gatherings in very different contexts, and we have to respect the context we're in. There are certain workspace gatherings we are talking about we space. It's just the wrong language to talk to. It's just we are here because we have a certain agenda, because we want to do some certain work, and to be language aware means also to be very aware in what context I'm in. If this is a psychotherapeutic context, a certain language is appropriate. If this is a spiritual context, a certain language is appropriate. If this is a business context, a certain language is appropriate. And in the business context, I don't think that necessarily the awareness you come from has to be a different awareness, because it has. There is this shared space that we're in, but you talk in the language of co-creating something together and finding creative solution of something together. What you're looking for is a resonance that is also held in the particular language that we are holding. So this we space, the way we do our work is also what we differentiate between an explicit conversation about we space and an implicit conversation about we space. Here right now, we really talk about the space itself, because we assume that we are in a circle of people who have a mutual understanding of what we're talking about. There are certain circles where this should not be assumed, and also it would be not fair to put this language on someone. But at the same time, because you don't have the same language, it is not true that resonance is not possible. So looking for the resonance in a certain space where, let's say you have an online meeting in a work context, and you just want to, between co-workers, to have a co-creative atmosphere, you are again looking for coherence, you are again looking for the resonance, and you find the particular language that in this context allows you to create this space.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Lynn. Winona.
Okay, I want to just share what I noticed in this small group. And it was a paradox. I was very surprised that in this online meeting, I was more aware of my body than in many face-to-face meetings. And I have been thinking about it in the break, and I think partially it is because it's such a new medium that my defenses just don't kick in. And I come here just full of trust, being myself. And yes, I really enjoy that. I love it. Thank you.
You're welcome. And actually, it's quite interesting, because this energetic experience of consciousness of the ground and the field that we're creating together is only perceivable through our bodies.
Mm.
So it is actually, I mean, the session yesterday was called Presence and Embodiment for that very reason. We're not, we are the instrument of perceiving and sensing this new space, and it gives us feedback. We experience it, and it's felt in our bodies, even though we're communicating through screen, because where else would we feel it? But that gives you some sense of the fact that there is something that we are in together.
Mm.
Yeah. Thank you. Richard from Hong Kong.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you. Thank you for this. Sometimes it feels like the previous question and your reflection of it is just the perfect segue to the next question. And I feel that right now because I was just reflecting, just thinking after the small group that I feel really comfortable and confident to share in this sort of a setting where there's time and space, there's curiosity, people are listening, and I thought, okay, this is easy to share in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
What about when that's not there? What about when that structure is not there? I still have plenty to say, but I won't say it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more likely to just stay quiet all the way through a meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the meeting, I think I'll feel separate.
Mm-hmm.
So my intention was maybe to protect myself, but in the end, I have maybe hurt myself.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't protected myself. I've ended up feeling separate when I wanted to feel connected and together. So part of my reason for raising my hand is just because I'm figuring that I have to grow out. I've done a lot of growing up, but it feels like maybe I have to grow out and connect in some new ways.
Mm-hmm.
So how can I create the structure so that I can speak out and connect? I suppose is a question.
Mm-hmm. Good.
The structures that we are creating here in these online meetings, like in any kind of gathering, but here in particular are structures of language. And this is something really worthwhile to contemplate, because when we are facilitating online meetings, we are opening up a consciousness space that feels safe or not safe, that feels appropriate or not appropriate, that feels on target or not on target. And the reason why it does or why it does not is because of our use of language. And to be very aware that here, even more than any other gathering, because it's so language dependent, because again, we are not in a physical place, we are just seeing us on screen and we are hearing each other, and the space that we are creating is through the modulation, to the tone, the sound, and to the meaning of language. And to be very aware that the way we do that is the way how we create and structure the space that we are in. And that allows me also to talk about something that we wanted to bring in for this course today, how language is the powerful tool to create coherence, to create resonance, and to be just aware to name it, that magic is exactly what language does. Language is a powerful magic tool. And just to explain what I'm saying, because it kind of sounds a little far-fetched to call it magic, but it's a very simple example. When I use the word tree in this round between us, we are around the globe, in different countries, in different continents, and just use the word tree. And in the space of our minds everywhere, something like a tree arises. So just by putting this word tree in our shared space, I'm creating a consciousness of tree in the space of 125 people that we are right now. And to be very aware that the way we bring spaces in, images in, connotations in, is the way how we create trust, how we create connection, and how we create meaning. So the power of language is the foundation of what we're doing here.
And to say, to take that a little further, it's how we invite people into a relationship of trust, a relationship of presence, a relationship of here-ness. That language, as Thomas was saying, is an invocation. It invokes tree, it invokes something in consciousness. But because we are working with consciousness here now, as we keep saying, because we are not held by anything other than our awareness and intention, that language is the means by which we invite people to be present, to be in a space together with us. And that is, as you said, Thomas, an important part of setting the resonance for coherence. And coherence is the foundation for co-creativity and creative friction. So that what we're hoping is that each of you, from how we're doing what we're doing and what it is that we're speaking about, will begin to have the confidence and the curiosity to begin to experiment with using some of these ways of working, in order that you can create the kind of spaces that you need to do the work that you need to do.
And maybe to say something that is obvious, but it's helpful to point it out anyway. Language starts with listening. Because when I use a word to talk to you, Richard, and I want to reach you with my word, I have to find a place where we have mutual understanding, where my language and your language can meet. So the starting point of my language is to listen where we have a common ground, where our language can meet. And to create this space of mutual understanding in whatever a meeting is about. It can be a therapeutic context, it can be business context, it can be spiritual context, whatever, starts with hearing where we have our mutual resonance field, and using my language in a way where I hopefully find your understanding and listen to your language, so that I hopefully can respond to you, that the understanding can build. And to create language in this way, in a very conscious way, allows to create the we space that we are talking about through the means of language.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rose.
Great. Caroline. Caroline Fairless. You'll have to unmute yourself. Caroline?
I'm unmuted.
Okay, great.
Hear me now?
Yeah.
I just have a couple of comments. When my colleagues and I first started working with a Zoom platform, I think what we tried to do was to allow the platform, the work, to replicate most basically what we used to have in an on-site circle. And over the months of this, I think I'm concluding that that's not the way to go. I think that rather some of the things, just for example, that we talked about was, you know, how do you use a kind of non-spirit platform like Zoom to recreate a spirit-filled circle of seekers of any kind? I'm not talking religion. I'm just talking about soul work. And my response to that, and I want to ask you about this, is I think we do ourselves disservice when we try to separate out spirit in one platform and no spirit in the other platform. And I think that to begin to understand a Zoom platform as capable of creating and holding a spirit space, soul space with people, rather than wondering how to translate from one to the other. This is a new experience. And so I think sometimes when we try to pull the other experiences into and make it work here, rather than understand this is a new opportunity and privilege, maybe we're doing ourselves a little bit of harm. And the other way it came to me about this is there's been a conversation in my circles about what if we all had the same background? You know, what if what stood behind us was identical? Would it simulate more like we were in the same space together? And I have come to understand, at least in my own experience, I think that might be a mistake, because just today, in the small groups, I could learn so much about the other members of my small group by looking at what their background is, their literal context background. And just take Maureen for an example. She's got the Water is Life poster, and Carol in my group just had lots and lots of color, and you're sitting with ceramics behind you and plant. And so there's a additional information. I'm not sure who it was, Nicole, I think, was talking about filling in spaces, how you need to find a new way to fill in the spaces that you can have an easier time in real life. But I think looking at a background where people place themselves in order to join a Zoom circle actually is a filling in of a space. It gives a lot of information and a lot of contextual richness to being present, to noticing, where did this person choose to sit? What is important to this person? There's no question in there. I think it's just a reflection.
I think also to realize that it is a very private thing that is being shared, that there are differences that are revealed in that can be very very deeply personal. We recommend that you choose where you are sitting and sit there in a way that without the fake background, because it makes more fakeness feeling or artificiality, but realize that people have different contexts that they're coming from, and their class differences, their cultural differences, that are important to realize that there's quite a it can be felt as something that is violating or too revealing. But that's why everyone needs to make their own choice about where they come from and how they appear. And it's also really important, and I think this goes back to Nicole's question, in filling in the spaces, are we projecting onto people? Are we projecting our assumptions and our beliefs about them? These are things that in this space we really need to be mindful of. I think that relates to Maureen's point about one's own triggers and so forth. But thank you. You're right. This is a unique experience that is new, and we need to learn protocols and develop new ways of working with it rather than just trying to be like in our offices.
Yeah, like not trying to recreate what we had, because it really does, I think, stand as a stumbling block to what's possible. The one thing, Thomas, that you talked about that I just wanted to lift up because I think it's so important is the self-releasing of agenda and all in the move towards openness. The first is the concept of trust. You have to trust that if you can take these steps, that what will happen is that kind of deep resonance and longing and a collective we, but it's a trust factor. Someone else mentioned courage. I think it is a courage factor also, but I just wanted to lift up the trust piece that you talk about.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Great. Polly.
Yeah, hi. Something happened in my group which was kind of interesting to me, and I just wanted to ask about it. So there was a woman in my group who was is Russian, and I have spoken Russian in my life. I know the language, and I thought about saying that to her, but I was trying to create the we space, and I thought maybe that was ego and not really being part of the group. So I didn't say it. And then when we got off, I felt like I really missed an opportunity to connect. Mm-hmm. And that was part of me that I wanted to bring in, and that I left myself out. And so it's really about that question of I and we, and how do we balance that in a way that feels real and connected.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting. You said the way that feels real and connected.
Yeah.
And part of that, what you're saying is, I have a way, and I know a way of feeling real and connected. And for example, asking her about Russian or saying something to her in Russian would have
No,
been.
I wasn't going to say anything. I was just going to say I speak Russian too. That's all.
But that is one way that you know. And
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Things, I think one is, it's an experiment, right? And we're inviting you into an experiment. There is this collective presence that comes alive between us when we are all each present and in this context. It's palpable, becomes more and more palpable the more attention we give it, the more we speak to it. And here we are as human beings with individual experiences and connections and questions and so forth.
Right.
What's important to do is to experiment and find out when does something become like something private within a shared space.
Right.
When does it add to something or create an opening? Right. This is part of what we're inviting you to experiment with in the breakout groups, is to it's like, well, what creates coherence? If I say, hey, I speak Russian too, does that add to the coherence of the group? Or does that start to, all of a sudden something feels like, oh, we lost something there.
Right.
So it's a mutual learning to figure out where the balance is. And because we often make a distinction between what we would call the interpersonal, which is what you were speaking about. We both speak, we both speak Russian, and the intersubjective or interbeing, which is the perception of the collective presence of the whole. Mm-hmm. And that those are two different dimensions of one experience.
Right.
They are not two different experiences, because even when one is deeply engaging in a very interpersonal engagement, that in that interpersonal engagement, there is also a deeper, subtle dimension of being together in presence that you may not even notice, but is there.
Mhm.
So we're talking about highlighting one dimension of our human interactions, and that there's a potential, a new kind of potential that emerges from that. But it doesn't wipe out our capacity or interest in engaging interpersonally also.
So you're saying there's not a right way, and it's an experiment. I got
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
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 Right. Thank you.
Great. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. We want to go into groups right now for 15 minutes, in groups of 5 for 15 minutes, and we would like you to explore language, how the use of language, experiment with how the use of language creates the space in the center. How can we invoke and invite each other into that space? And you might even discover in the process what takes away. But explore how to, and practice how can I use language to open this space, deepen this space, enhance our awareness of this in which we are together. Is that clear enough?
So we will make it for 15 minutes, and we will let you know half time again.
And there will be a little counter up in the corner so you can just check and see how long the time has been.
See you back in 15 minutes.
Okay, welcome back. I hope you had a good experience. So I just want to frame a little bit what we're doing, what we're going to do for the rest of this session. So you were speaking about language as invocation and as an invitation to the coherence of the space from which one can do one's work. And we'd like to hear from you about what it is that you've discovered, but we would like to do this in a slightly different way. And we would like to invite you to unmute yourself and speak and join the conversation. And that we can then create a whole conversation here. So we've started with one-on-one yesterday, moving to a small group, working with the raising hands. Now we're going to do something that's going to take a little bit more, that's going to be more challenging. Now make sure that you mute yourself until you speak, please. Yeah, Rebecca, we can hear your background noise. Thank you. And I will actually call on the first person, the person who raised her hand, so that there's space, but give each other space in this conversation.
And also, you also can raise your hand. So if you feel that it's less pressure for you to raise your hand, we also will bring people in who do raise your hand, so that we can work both ways. You can come in directly, but also as a second option, we still can use the raised hand. So you have two options to come in.
Yeah, really, let's give space. Let's listen. As we said, listening is an important part of languaging or of providing space around language, and allow, particularly if you've spoken before or spoken more than once or twice, let's allow for different voices to be heard. But Shadi, I saw that you raised your hand very quickly, and please, you can start.
Thank you, and thank you for this incredible experience. It's not at all what I thought it was going to be, and it's so much better. So thank you very, very much. You spoke yesterday about how we seek resonance, and I wanted to. It so struck me. Yet I don't feel like I know exactly what you mean, but somehow it just it hit the drum of my heart. So I wondered if you could speak a little bit more about this idea that we as humans seek resonance.
Can I, Thomas, I know Thomas wants to respond, but I wanted to say this hitting the drum of your heart is it. That surface that vibrates. That's
yeah.
You want to continue?
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
But because just using, just listening to you, the language you're using, that you don't know quite what this resonance means, suggests to me that there is also a part of you that does know. And just as a question, if there's kind of an ambivalence of not knowing and knowing what this resonance is that we're talking about, because I don't want to put anything into your mouth, and just finding out if I understood you right when I heard you this way.
I feel like I understood the idea of what resonance might be. What I wanted a greater understanding of is that seeking, that wanting to find resonance, that is one of the main, what I heard was you saying that's one of the main drivers in our relationships, in our conversations, whether it's online or in person or what have you.
In fact, it's the whole art of it. Let's look at the screen. We see a pretty similar screen, right? I see you, you see me, but we see all the others. And nearly none of them we know. So in an online meeting like this, we are starting with a seemingly fragmented situation, where there are different faces that we don't know, different names that we don't know, and we have a certain context. Like here is the context of creating a course about online aliveness. And we start a conversation. And the way we start the conversation right now is that you bring in what you bring in, and I try from my own understanding to respond to you. There's a resonance to your question, and I'm seeking mutual understanding. And I hope that I understood your question and I understood your concern, and seeing that you're nodding a little bit gives me a suggestion that maybe there's something where we reached some mutual understanding. So we slowly, as we are unfolding this conversation, looking for resonance, for synergy in the way we create this space held in language. And there are a lot of faculty that we are using for that, but in the end, it is an intuitive seeking for understanding, resonance, coherence, synergy, and there is no way then testing and finding out how we create this. As we started this conversation, we are not at the point zero anymore. There's something that already started a thread, and following this thread and weaving this thread allows us to create greater coherence, greater resonance, and greater coherence.
But and to go back to that hitting the drum of my heart, it's like when there's a before thought kind of opening response. That is the part of the ground or the intuitive grasp of resonance. But this doesn't mean, and I think this is really important, this doesn't mean that everything has to be harmonious. It's not about simple making things harmonious. Where the resonance can also have dissonance in it. But that dissonance is met with resonance, with a desire for mutual understanding. It's like, oh, wow, I'm interested in that. That doesn't immediately resonate with me. But the fact that there is, that I have that it is in the shared space together, I bring my curiosity, I bring my desire for mutual understanding, my desire to create complex resonance. It's not all just, everything's nice and fine, but also has a complexity of dissonance and different kinds of harmonies in it. But that being held in the whole of our presence.
I would like to experiment with jumping in.
Can we wait?
Let her respond.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I guess my additional question to that, I mean, that was just so beautiful, would be, what are we ultimately seeking to feel? Is it that we're seeking love? Are we seeking to see and be seen? Is the resonance enough? Like, it's just, okay, I've had an experience of understanding you, you've had an experience of understanding me, and that and what we've created together? Or are we looking for something else when we are we doing this as a way to find something else that we're seeking? And the word love or spirit or something comes to mind.
I think it depends on what our work is. This is we're giving you an opening to a space and saying, please use this. This is a way to work online in a much deeper and more deeply connected way. See what you can make of this. For us, in terms of our work, yes, we do see, because it is working with consciousness, that it creates something you could say at a spiritual level or spirit level, that there is an enlivening and an opening that is that is spiritual, you could call it that. But it's really just a deep engagement with human experience and the deeper dimensions of human experience that we don't often share.
Thank you. Mary, I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Thank you. Sorry to jump in on you.
No, it's fine.
I was experimenting. Well, I was so grateful for your question, and it's Shadi?
Right? Shadi, like buddy.
Okay, good. Because I've been sitting here for the last hour wondering, why are they using the word resonance? I didn't understand. And when you said about hitting the drum, I realized I have this thing where my truth rings true in you, your truth. And so it's that truth rings true. And what I've learned, my most personal truth, what is it? The most personal is the most universal. So I am just so grateful, Shadi, for your sharing. And also, we had dissonance in our group. Somebody arrived in the liminal space before everybody else. And we let that be and we talked about it. So I'll pass.
Thank you, Mary.
In our group, it was a wonderful experience, and one of the folks in our group, we started with actually silence rather than saying anything, and this member of our group talked about how silence itself is a language. And that's true. I mean, it's a very powerful thing, very wonderful thing. One concern I always have, I work with a group that we teach spiritual guidance, and we have a lot of therapists who work with us. I'm concerned about how we are attentive to dissonance when we're not in the same room. Most of us who are either spiritual directors or therapists are used to looking at a lot of things from body language, to a lot of other things that just are not, I guess, in experimenting with how to use this wonderful space we've had. How do we protect the boundaries of the person we're talking to? And just be more attentive to dissonance and more sensitive as to how to handle it, if that makes sense.
Does make sense, David. And I made just a different language. Instead of saying that we are not in the same space, to maybe say that we're in a different space together. And the reason why I would prefer to use this language, because it allows us to explore this other space that we are in and see how we can create resonance, harmony, also harmony, including disharmony in this different space. Because I very much agree with you. This is different than being in an on-site space. It is different. There are a lot of things, a lot of clues that we usually have that we don't have here. But seeing you on the screen and being aware of you and being aware of Shadi speaking, being aware of Mary speaking, there's something weaving between us that it seems we are together aware of. And there is a sensuality that we can have in this different space that we are in here right now, which is an online space, that can develop our capacity to weave this conversation together. And there's a lot we have to learn anew here because it works differently. But to open to the fact that there's something that is possible here that's different but possible, and allow this shared learning to open up between us. It's exactly what we try to do with this course. It is, I agree, we have to move slowly because it's like learning a different language to some degree. Some degree it's not, because a lot of parts from the other context we can use here, and we have to discern what we can use and what we can not use. But to the degree that we start to learn, we start to become comfortable. And what we would suggest, there is the possibility of mastery of this space. And this is what we try to achieve together here.
Thank you. Yes.
I'd like to invite Carol Zhu in. She's had her hand raised for a while.
Thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth. I got some really useful kind of suggestions, ideas from my breakout room group, and I'm really grateful. And I want to deepen that inquiry a little bit more here. I notice myself when it's in the work setting, and in this case, it's not even in a work setting. I'm hosting an online learning circle, and we are, we all have some kind of level of, meditation experience. So we, kind of set in this routine of like a minute of silence together, and then a check-in round. But what I realize is that because we only have an hour, and I have this mind that is like, oh, we need to cover, a lot of ground within this hour. And so what was intentional at the beginning for these, silence of, 1 minute check-in, these little steps, it became just kind of a routine that my mind want to kind of jump over. And I feel like other people also have this tendency to speed things up rather than slow things down. And that problem is multiplied in other work settings as well. It's just really hard to slow the pace down. and we end up just being busy and rushing into agendas and decision making. And yeah, so I just want to, you know, like, how do I even slow myself down? And then when other people feel like, you know, they want to rush, and how do I meet that, you know, how, yeah, that's my question.
Oh, thank you, Carol. You're expressing a dilemma, a particular dilemma for work sessions, because of course there are deadline and there's outside pressure to achieve something, and things need time to emerge. And part of the necessity to facilitate is to how to bring these two realities together, that there are deadlines, there's pressure from the outside, and at the same time you have to protect the space with the people you're with so that something can emerge between you. And this is, I'm very quite often not easy, but sometimes, in fact, quite often, it means to slow down. Because the rush through kind of to-do lists does not allow the creative emergence to open up, that allows you to come to the creativity that really makes a difference. Of course, there's also some things you cannot do because it's not a spiritual session you're in. It's not just investigating the beauty of coming together. You want to do something. So that you have to manage the polarity of the situation. And the mastery is exactly to find the sweet spot where, to the best possible degree, both necessity can meet. Where you have enough space, but also enough respect for that you are in a work context, you want to achieve something. And also to create a respect between all of you that both is possible. The space for something to emerge, and also the context that you want to achieve something in a certain context is honored. I know it's not an answer, but I think it is the direction where we can develop our skills to develop mastery, how to do this.
Just like we were saying before, I think in many ways, we can't do a one-to-one correspondence between time and the way that we engage, between what we used to do and what we're doing on Zoom or in video conferencing, or trying to use this modality. And that's very important, because I think we think if we had a learning session that was an hour long, we can do it in an hour on Zoom. Maybe not. Maybe it needs 90 minutes. You know, maybe it needs a very different way of approaching what it is that we're doing. And that's something that we're going to have to figure out, because it's not the same. And to be able to get really what is possible out of this context, one has to work with what it is, which is not like being in a seminar room or a classroom together.
Maybe also one last thing, your awareness of the dilemma is the fundamental ingredients that allows you to find the marriage of both. The very pressure that you experience, how to bring this together, allows you to find the point, the sweet spot where this is possible, but it's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also best done together with everyone else in the meeting, not just on your own.
Mm-hmm. To really co-create it. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just say something about the presence of Elizabeth and Thomas? Because I feel like they have been, from the beginning, like just modeling, I'll say, a slowness or a presence to all of us. And as you were talking to Carol, like, you have an agenda, you have things that you want to cover, but we don't even feel that. And so that has been a great learning for me. And just your comment that if a class is an hour, the Zoom might take an hour and a half. That's good to know, because I also find that people don't want to stay on Zoom as long. So if you taught a 2-hour class, they don't want to really be on Zoom 2 hours. So I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is things take longer and it's worth it. So thank you, Elizabeth and Thomas, for your expert modeling.
Yeah, thank you, Robin. I think it's also, people don't want to be on Zoom when it's exhausting. And it's exhausting when we try to do the same thing that we do that we've done in our lives before through this medium, because we feel like we're putting a large thing through a small hole or something. It just doesn't, it doesn't work. And so when it does work, time flies. You know, when we are working with the strength of what this is and working in a way that upholds, I'd say, our presence and the reality of that, and honors that with each other, then we're not tired out by it. We're not exhausted by it.
Because at least my interpretation of this exhaustion that you're referring to, and that I think everyone knows, is that we feel the lack of flow on Zoom. There's this kind of stuckness. And one reason why we talk so much about resonance is because, to the degree that we reach resonance, there is also an energetic flow on this online gathering. That is, and we find this again and again, very surprising for people that this is possible. There's an energetic flow between all of us that in fact can be very invigorating. And we do know meetings where people are on Zoom for a long time and they feel enlivened by being there, not because of Zoom, but because of each other, because it was possible to meet each other. And that's basically all what this is about. Basically, it's about forgetting Zoom and realizing, yes, we are using Zoom, but in reality, we are with each other. And as soon as we find a way to do that, to be with each other in this new medium, there's a flow possible. And this flow is something that can be a very joyful thing to be in.
That is the aliveness.
That is the aliveness.
Great, thank you. And I think we're now 2 minutes over time. I'm very sorry. It goes so fast. But thank you all very, very much for being here. Thank you for your time and your attention. It's very precious, and your intention. And tomorrow we will continue to practice over these next few days. And we are taking you, as we said, from a one-on-one to give you the bigger and bigger contexts and longer times to really work with each other in order to be able to experiment and learn. So tomorrow we'll continue that process, and we look forward to seeing you then. And as we have said before, we will open the breakout rooms that you were last in if you want to hang out in a breakout room with somebody, or you can hang out here in the main room.
Or if you have to leave, you can leave.
Yeah. And we will see you tomorrow.
We will see you tomorrow. Thank you very much for being with us. And if you want to hang out here, the room is open and the breakout rooms are open too. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you? Is that so? Did the person leave? I think it said Andreas. I hadn't heard his voice. I was just curious, but I think he left. I think he just.
I'm sorry. I'm not sure what you're.
I was looking at.
I know who you mean, Jean. Andreas
Yes.
Wenger. Yeah, I saw him earlier today in the session, but I haven't seen him near the end.
Okay. Yeah, he was on there for just a moment. I was like, I haven't,
Ah,
I don't know.
yeah, it's not quite, it's such a fast departure, even if you can hang around, that it's hard to catch people.